Hi, this is Bill Vick. I'm talking to Bill Gerhardt. Bill is the CEO of Respivant. Who watching this as a patient, who has not at some point in time encountered that monster of the cough? And we all have talked about it. It's probably one of the most talked about topics at our support group meetings here in Dallas when we get together as a group and we have 80 to 100 patients sitting around talking about the progression and living the lifestyle with this disease. And the cough is one of the first topics I think most people will mention. And Bill, what you're doing is so exciting to all of us because it's answering that question that has not had an answer to date.
Yeah, no, that's true. We are excited about the potential of making a significant difference in the lives of IPF patients with a chronic, persistent, hard-to-treat cough.
In your studies and what you've been involved now in inhaled products for lung diseases for quite a while, and what makes this so unique and different in your mind?
Well, I have been a founder CEO type most of my career, and I've helped start a couple of companies focused on treating serious respiratory diseases. We developed an inhaled antibiotic for treating cystic fibrosis that's now on the market. And I helped develop an inhaled long-acting bronchodilator that's on the market for people with COPD. And we have become convinced that the best way to treat a respiratory disease is to deliver the drug via inhalation so that we can get really large, effective doses of the drug in the lung without exposing the rest of the body to a medicine at anywhere near the anywhere near the levels that you would need to expose the body if you were taking a pill, for example, in order to try to get enough of the drug in the lung. So we think of it as a topically administering the drug in the organ of interest, similar as if you had a skin problem and you were using a cream to treat that problem as opposed to taking a pill that exposes your whole body to the drug to try to treat that skin problem.
As a layperson in looking at this question and this problem of the cough, how come no one seized on this opportunity before? This seems intuitively obvious. If you could inhale something and stop the cough, it would work faster.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that it goes back to the complexity around why people cough. Cough is a very heterogeneous condition, meaning that people cough for a lot of different reasons. And it's likely even that patients who have IPF cough for different reasons. Part of that may be because they have something else going on. Part of the reason why they cough could be because of the fibrosing of the tissue in the lung, interrupting cough receptors. And we believe that a large reason why patients are coughing is because of the chronic inflammation that's associated with the underlying fibrosis. An IPF lung is an angry lung, if you were to go down and look in it with a camera, marked by inflammation. And we believe that that inflammation not only contributes to the progression of fibrosis, but also hypersensitizes cough receptors in the lung that lower the threshold at which they cough. So going back to the question as to why nobody has done this before, even though it's well understood to be a significant problem, it's very difficult to identify a drug that's going to work for treating cough. There hasn't been a new cough medicine developed and approved in more than 50 years. And there have been a lot of companies that have taken a lot of drugs into clinical trials that should have worked, that worked in all of the animal studies, but once they were administered to patients, they either didn't work or the side effects from taking it orally were too high in order to be successful as a drug. So in our case, we had an inhaled drug that we know significantly reduces that chronic inflammation in the lung, and we felt like if we could get to a high enough dose that we could make a really significant difference in patients with fibrosis who have this really retractable cough.
So I'm trying to understand because I love what you're saying, but Can I safely say that your inhaled e-flow closed system is like a nebulizer?
Yeah, so there are different ways to inhale a drug. One easy way to inhale a drug is with an inhaler, either a dry powder inhaler where you breathe it in rapidly and get the drug in the lung, or a meter dose inhaler. People have seen that where somebody squirts it and you inhale it in a single breath. The advantage of those devices for delivering a drug is convenience because it takes a very short period of time to get the drug in the lungs. The disadvantage is that not very much drug can be delivered to the lung using those devices. So if you need to deliver a lot of drug to the lung in order to make a significant difference, then you would need to nebulize it, which basically is a fancy way of saying that you aerosolize a liquid into a mist and the patient breathes it in normally over a period of minutes in order to get a full dose. What we have, and I don't have the device with me, but what we have is a handheld electric silent nebulizer device that fits in the palm of your hand, and patients can put their mouth on it while it's producing an aerosol, put their mouth on the mouthpiece while it's producing an aerosol, and get a full dose after a few minutes of breathing in normally without the inconvenience of needing to plug it into the wall or make a lot of noise or take a long period of time. So we use the particular device that we are delivering this drug for two big advantages. One is that we can get a lot of drug into the lung in a safe and well-tolerated and very convenient way for patients. And second of all, it produces a small aerosol particle so that we can get down into the deep lung where fibrosis is the biggest problem.
Well, I know you're actively engaged in trials right now, the SCENIC trials that are active and open and really looking for people to participate, which seems like a no-brainer to me because if I had a cough, I wanted to stop. And we've all tried the cough drops and whatever, honey and hot tea, all that stuff, and none of it works. Maybe it gives you a little relief, but it doesn't really work. If I want to get involved in this trial, Bill, I'm a patient. I'd like to get involved in this trial. I'm in Dallas, Texas. How can I find out about it, and how can I get involved in it?
Well, the easiest thing to do is to ask your pulmonologist about this clinical trial that we're conducting now. We use the acronym SCENIC, SCENIC, which stands for sodium cromolyn via an electronic nebulizer device for IPF cough. And most pulmonologists will be aware of this clinical trial and be aware of where we are conducting this clinical trial. The other thing that patients can do is to go to our website, scenictrial.com, and on that website is information about this clinical trial and all of the participating clinical trial sites so that they can easily see where is the closest clinical trial site to their home.
Well, in this interview, when it's displayed online, if the viewer looking at it looks at the bottom of the article itself that accompanies it, they'll find those links for both your website and also the SCENIC trial.
Okay.
So it'll be a kind of an easy kind of click and go idea. Something else I have to point out, Bill, because I was really in a way touched by this. Is I was reading through your website and your mission statement. You said something that just resonated with me, and I have to point it out to the people that are listening to this because I think it says everything about you and the company. And what it says is that we're a company dedicated to significantly improving the lives of patients suffering from respiratory diseases. And I'll tell you, I, for one, applaud that, and I'm one of many that are sitting by the sidelines saying yay and jumping up and down because there's nothing more important to us than living a better life, and the cough is one of the most debilitating things we face in our journey.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Bill, and it's a mission that we're, as a company, passionate about. And one of our challenges, frankly, for developing this drug to treat this particular indication is convincing investors and the larger pharmaceutical community around the severity of the condition for these patients, because for some patients, cough is bothersome and is a nuisance and is embarrassing, and that in and of itself is a problem. But for other patients, this cough, as you know, can be quite debilitating.
Mm-hmm.
When we go out in the marketplace and we talk to investors about funding clinical trials like this, it may not surprise you to learn that one of our biggest challenges is convincing them that this is a really big problem that we need to develop better treatments for.
Mm-hmm.
I like to say that calling what IPF patients do cough is like calling a migraine a headache. Technically, they're the same thing, but practically speaking, the severity is significantly higher than what somebody is imagining when you tell them that you're treating a drug for cough, because they think about, oh, I know cough, I've coughed before, my grandma's cough, etc. And so one of the key challenges for us and one of the key opportunities for us is to do a much better job of communicating to the market generally the prevalence and the impact of cough on the lives of these patients. And while the primary endpoint for this study is to reduce cough and improve quality of life for patients, which would be huge for a large percentage of them, we also believe fundamentally that this therapy will eventually be demonstrated to slow down progression of the underlying disease. So in this current clinical trial, we're also measuring all of the disease progression endpoints, such as pulmonary function and 6-minute walk test. We're measuring biomarkers of fibrosis progression in hopes of showing that the drug may actually be capable of doing more than reducing cough and improving quality of life. Although, obviously, if we could do just that, that would be a home run for many patients. So we have conducted a phase 2A study in a small number of patients, and we demonstrated that the drug works and that it's well tolerated. Patients could hardly tell the difference between placebo and the active. And we designed this new study to identify what's the optimal dose for treating cough. And also we designed it in such a way that where patients might not be on active drug in the first part, every patient that enrolls in this study will be assured of being given the active drug in the second part of the study as a reward for participating in the study. And we'll capture all of that information while they're on that second part of the study as well. So we are really working hard to try to get the word out to as many IPF patients and their families as possible, so that at least they're aware and would consider participating in this clinical trial. And we've done everything we can to make it as easy as possible for patients to participate in order to help us develop new therapies for IPF patients.
Well, I looked at the clinicaltrials.gov site on the trials, and it's kind of like a wide open gate. It's not restrictive. The age categories is very broad. I forget the low number. I think it was 59 to 89, which is going to probably cover 99% of all the patients out there. And so it's an easy trial to engage in. There's many, many locations around the United States. It's just not something I have to jump in my car or hop on a plane to get part of the trial. It's local in many, many communities. And if somebody's watching this, I'd encourage them to take a moment or two and click the link in this message and take a look at it, because I know I will, as one. And I'm encouraging our network here in Dallas, the PF Warriors, as well as our affiliated members that are elsewhere, that this is something that's worthwhile and it can be life-changing. And if you've experienced the cough, you'll want to do it. If you haven't experienced the cough, you better do it, because it's not a fun trip.
Yeah, appreciate that, Bill. We really appreciate you helping us get the word out to as many patients as possible. And we ourselves are reaching out to as many of the patient advocacy and patient support groups, just to give them the awareness that this trial exists, and that we've done everything that we can to make it as easy as possible for patients to participate in clinical trials. one of the really big challenges to developing new therapies for an orphan disease like IPF is that a very small percentage of patients are willing to participate in clinical trials for different reasons. Some of them are valid reasons, but if patients don't participate in clinical trials, there aren't enough patients to develop new medicines and to eventually be able to offer medicines that make a significant difference in their lives, as well as potentially stop or even eventually cure this disease one day. So we need patients who are able and willing to consider participating in a clinical trial in order to help the pharmaceutical industry do its job, which is invent new medicines that can make a significant difference in patients' lives.
Excellent. Well, Bill, I want to thank you for sharing your time with us and talking about something that's so dear to all of our hearts. And I guess I'm going to say the cough is it's a terrible thing. And finally, we have some hope on the horizon. And I want to thank you and the company.
Thank you, Bill, and thank you for everything you do for the community.